welcome to the BEASTwriter podcast. I am your host, Ryan Sakamoto, and tonight we're going to be discussing my NFL mock draft picks 6 through 10. Now, if you're new to following me, thank you for tuning in, and if you have been following me and subscribed to my channel, be sure to do that. If you haven't already, I have included a button. You see that icon in the lower right hand or left hand corner of your screen. I believe for you it's the right hand corner, so it'd be this little guy right here. That'll be in all my videos, so you can subscribe to my channel at any time and you can stay up to date on all things Beast. Make sure you also turn on the bell notifications so you get notified of when I do post these uploaded videos, and that way you can catch my analysis in real time. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. Again, I broke down my picks 1 through 5 in an earlier podcast that I did earlier this morning, and if you missed it, I included it in the description below. I also included it in the pinned comment, so if you missed picks 1 through 5, not to worry, I included those for you and you can find those there. Also, at the end of each video, I include my podcast playlist, so be sure to check that out so you guys can see what I said in real time and then compare it how it is in hindsight. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, enough about the process. And before I make my picks and talk about picks 6 through 10, one last thing I want to tell you. It's based on what I see actually playing out, not what I would do if I was the team's GM. So these picks that I'm making is not as if I was the GM making these picks. That's going to be based on my big board. This is actually based on my analytics and how I see the draft actually playing out as the draft unfolds. Alright, makes sense? It makes sense. Alright, so let's get down to it. Alright, at number 6, we have Fly Eagles Fly. And it's going to be a choice as to what direction the Philadelphia Eagles will go in. Obviously, GM Howie Roseman has a decision to make with Carson Wentz. There's been some trade rumors there, and he's not happy. And so it was either Doug Peterson or Carson Wentz. Obviously, they got rid of Doug Peterson. He's out, and they brought in Nick Sirianni. He's in, and now we have a new regime in place. Funny how 3 years can change a head coaching's fortunes, but that's the NFL for you. I mean, that's crazy, man, right? Doug Peterson takes them to a Super Bowl under Nick Foles, wins the Super Bowl, and then he's no longer in Philadelphia. NFL stands for not for long. But it is what it is. And now the Philadelphia Eagles hold the 6th pick overall. What are they going to do? Well, they're in salary cap hell right now. They're $53 million deep. So in order to move some salary cap space, especially with a depleted salary cap, they're going to have to tailor back somewhere. And you're going to have to cut the fat somewhere. And that fat is going to come from Deshaun Jackson's contract. By wiping your hands clean of Deshaun Jackson, you're saving the team in excess of $4.8 million in cap savings. So when you do that, that's a good starting price to look into, because the price point of getting a wide receiver in a rookie contract on a 4-year deal with a 5th-year option, it plays in the Eagles' financial long-term gain. And when you do that, you have to look into it from a GM standpoint and say that this makes financial sense. Of course, we all know what's happening with Alshon Jeffrey. You can't get rid of him because he's tied too much in dead money. But again, he's been oft injured too. So what exactly do the Philadelphia Eagles have? Yeah, they got Jalen Reagor, but he's not really producing. You have to get someone else. You have to give Carson Wentz more targets. And if you're sitting there at number 6 with Devonta Smith already off the board, you have to take the best player available, and that guy to me is Ja'Marr Chase. Hands down, Ja'Marr Chase. And I would argue that Ja'Marr Chase was a better prospect than Devonta Smith was. I wouldn't say this year, because Devonta Smith, my man, had one hell of a Heisman year, but it was on par to what Devonta Smith did, and he produced that production back in 2019. If you remember, in 2019, LSU also had wide receiver Justin Jefferson. They also had Thaddeus Moss, Randy Moss's son, as a tight end. You also had Clyde Edwards-Helaire there. So there's a lot of offensive weapons on that team, and for Ja'Marr Chase to just go ahead and just have a stellar season with that many offensive weapons on the offense side of the ball at LSU, you can't deny that type of production. So with that being said, it's hard enough for any GM to go away from the best player available when it comes to Ja'Marr Chase. So I look for Ja'Marr Chase to be the guy at number 6. They wipe their hands clean of Deshaun Jackson, and then they can move forward with Jalen Reagor and Jamar Chase for the foreseeable future. All right, so he'll be the pick with the Eagles at number 6 as it currently stands, and let's get down to pick number 7. At number 7, the Detroit Lions are in house, and you can basically literally make a case that they can draft any position. Every position, even at running back, even though they got DeAndre Swift, you can make a case for even running back. Their needs are a plethora of different needs. Now, this is a hot trade spot for a trade down. If new GM Brad Holmes, the director of college scouting, coming over from the Los Angeles Rams, feels that there's a need to go ahead and get more draft capital, that's obviously a hot spot scenario in case a team like, I don't know, teams behind them that need a quarterback like a Justin Fields, like maybe the Carolina Panthers want to make a play for Justin Fields. And in order to move up one spot from 8 to 7, they're going to have to give up some draft capital in return. Now, whatever that conversation, like however those conversations are going to take place, that's all to be seen. But one thing that we know for sure is that it is a hot spot for a possible trade down scenario, simply because Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson will both be off the board by the time the Lions are on the clock. And with Matthew Stafford and the Detroit Lions agreeing to mutually part ways, you saw my podcast on that and the trade rumors of him going to San Francisco, and now talks are heating up as to whether or not the 49ers are going to make a play for him. That's a whole nother discussion, and you can watch that podcast. I included that podcast again in the pinned post here below. I also included it up here for you guys. I'm trying to get used to it. Here. No, it's up here for you guys, so you guys can kind of see and kind of connect the dots and pieces to the puzzle as it relates to this podcast. Because with Matthew Stafford out, a new head coach in, a new regime in, you're going to want your own guy. And with Dan Campbell in place, I think he's going to want a guy like Justin Fields and obviously move on from Matthew Stafford. So depending on what the Lions receive for Matthew Stafford, obviously a first round pick has been in discussion. We all heard about it with the San Francisco 49ers, who are sitting there at 12. That will be on the next podcast as to what the Niners will do at 12. But you guys can kind of connect the dots and kind of formulate your game plan as to which direction the Detroit Lions will go in. For now, we make the pick, and at number 7, I believe that player is going to be Justin Fields out of the Ohio State University. Okay? Now, moving on to the Carolina Panthers. For all you Panthers fans, I know I have a lot of Panthers followers and supporters. Thank you so much. Let's keep pounding. If you watched my first podcast on what the Panthers would do at number 8, I said that player would be Micah Parsons out of Penn State because he was a linebacker that could fill a plethora of different needs. He can play the Sam linebacker. I think that's where his best fit is. However, because Jeremy Chin plays the Sam, I think he'll be kicked into middle linebacker or the Mike linebacker if he was to get drafted by the Carolina Panthers. However, you guys will be happy because I don't see that playing out. I think they're going to go away from Micah Parsons. I think they're going to go after cornerback Patrick Surtain II. That's correct. I think that Patrick Surtain II would be a viable option. Now, again, we don't know what's going to happen with the number 8th overall pick. ESPN Bill Barnwell reported that he thinks that the Carolina Panthers are the number 2 likely destination for Deshaun Watson. If you kept up with my podcast, you would know that I put out a Deshaun Watson podcast as a potential trading partner with the Carolina Panthers and the Houston Texans and what it would take to get him. I included that in the upper right hand corner of the screen so you can keep up and look at that podcast as it relates to what it would take for the Carolina Panthers to land Deshaun Watson. I also included that in the description and pinned post below. So again, if you missed any of my podcasts, I strongly urge you to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell notification so you see what I'm saying in real time. It all makes sense, and now it's all coming out, right? So it is what it is, and again, the Carolina Panthers hold the number 8th overall pick. It remains to be seen what they're going to do there, but as it stands right now, when you have a player where needs meet best player available, how can you go wrong with Patrick Surtain II? If you follow me on Twitter, I said that he was a best cornerback in this draft. He's my number 1 ranked cornerback in this draft, hands down. And he was my number 2 ranked cornerback coming out of if he were to come out of last year, hypothetically, right? So very high in Patrick Surtain, and this is what you're getting, right? You're getting a guy here's my notes right here, man. A guy with strong man coverage skills. He's strong at the point of attack in terms of bump and run, right? He fights and run support, stays square at the line of scrimmage. He rarely takes false steps, has a strong rhythm cadence in his back pedal. These are all things you look for in a boundary cornerback. Now, if you're looking for a nickel back, you're looking at different traits. Maybe a quick twitch muscle fiber guy. Maybe a guy who's a little bit more twitchy in terms of having the oily hips to break in and out of his breaks, whether it's going right or going left. But simply talking about a boundary cornerback with the sound fundamentals to use the sideline as an extra defender and knowing where your help is with the safeties, whether he's playing the deep thirds or the deep halves, Patrick Surtain is all that in one. And I think a testament to that has to be due to the fact that he is considered a legacy. If you follow me on Twitter, I've even pointed out that Patrick Surtain II is a legacy. What I mean by a legacy is his father actually played for the Miami Dolphins, Patrick Surtain, the original Patrick Surtain, alongside Sam Madison over the course of the year. So he's a Pro Bowl cornerback. During the late 90s and mid to late 90s and even early 2000s, Sam Madison and Patrick Surtain on that Miami Dolphins D with Zach Thomas roaming the middle, and then you had Aaron Taylor, guys like that. I mean, these are guys that were just creating havoc, and it all started up front, but those cornerbacks, they were pretty ballers in their own right. And Patrick Surtain II benefited from his dad's guidance over the course of his career. And like I said, I like the way Patrick Surtain plays his game because he's very fundamentally sound. He'll never be caught or rarely get caught out of position. The one thing I will point out though is when he gets down in the red zone, especially in zone coverage, he peaks too much in the backfield and does get caught out of position off play action pass. That's one thing to look for. But aside from that, what the Carolina Panthers are getting is the best player available at a position of need. I think if you look at the roster right now and you look at it and you'll be laughing to yourself and be like, okay man, we're gonna get toasted. Like, we didn't do anything in the draft. We had Patrick Surtain sitting there and we rolled with another player. No, you take the player, that guy's going to be Patrick Surtain. Because let me tell you, if you don't pick up Patrick Surtain, the teams behind you are going to wish that he was available and you guys benefited by having a better draft position. So Patrick Surtain to me reminds me of a young Troy Vincent. Again, yeah, I'm old. Troy Vincent was a Philadelphia Eagles cornerback, played alongside Brian Dawkins over the course of the years and was a Pro Bowl stud. I see similar traits in Patrick Surtain's game. Look for him to be the pick in Carolina as Matt Rule gets his boundary cornerback. All right, cool story, bro. Now let's move on to the Denver Broncos at pick number 9. I'm excited. Woo! All right, with the Denver Broncos and head coach Vic Fangio involved, Denver could use a lot of help. They need help on all 3 levels of the defense. Like, it just goes without saying. Bradley Chubb was banged up. I graded every snap of his. If you follow me on Twitter, I posted my grade on him. And with Von Miller out the whole entire year, there's no doubt in my mind that he may be a possible cap casualty at the end of the year. It is the end of the year. Soon, simply put. And the reason I say that is because the Denver Broncos need salary cap health. And one way of doing that is wiping your hands clean of Von Miller and saving the team $18 million in cap savings. So if you do that, you pair Bradley Chubb, and then you still have the best middle linebacker in this draft on the board, how can you go wrong and not take Micah Parsons? How can you not? You get Bradley Chubb, Micah Parsons, then you can justify your reasoning to the Broncos media as to why you wiped hands clean of Von Miller because you guys needed salary cap health. Obviously, John Elway is no longer the GM there, so it can happen. It can happen. And furthermore, Fangio loves his linebackers. I should know. I covered the 49ers during his tenure in San Francisco, and one thing that he loves is his linebackers. He loved Roquan Smith coming out of Chicago Bears. Obviously he had Patrick Wilson, Navarro Bowman, but he also loved Aaron Lynch coming out. So he loves his linebackers, and I can't emphasize that enough in the press conferences over the years. That's one thing I got from Vic Fangio, is he loves his linebackers. All right, he hates rookies, but he loves his linebackers. Make sense? Makes sense. All right, so look for Parsons to be the pick, especially if Surtain is off the board. I believe that Fangio would love the chance to grab a guy like Patrick Surtain. However, the Carolina Panthers are smart enough under Panthers GM Scott Fitterer, which I pointed out in an earlier podcast. I'm doing this because I'm going to put another end card up so you can watch that podcast that got a lot of good interaction and engagement as to what he would bring to keep pounding Carolina Panthers. All right, so that's the pick, Micah Parsons. All right, last but not least, we have the Dallas Cowboys. How about them Cowboys? Jimmy Johnson voice. Wow. Well, where do they go from here, right? They would have loved, again, to have Patrick Surtain fall to them. Unfortunately, they're not in a position to go ahead and get him because he went to the Carolina Panthers. Sorry, not sorry. But this is what's happening, right? The Dallas Cowboys already have a lot of needs, right? Yeah, they had Tyron Smith, who was injured. They had La'el Collins, who was out for the entire year, who was injured. You had guys like Travis Frederick retiring, and then you have guys like Zach Martin, who missed 6 games due to injury. So a shaky offensive line, and then Dak Prescott was injured, out for the year. We all know the story with that. So the offensive line and the offense in general needs a lot of help. And even if those guys return healthy, you can make a case and say, well, they should get Christian Darrisaw, right, out of Virginia Tech. Well, I think it was. I don't see Christian Darrisaw being the pick at number 10. I think that the way Jimmy Johnson, no, Jimmy Johnson voiced, how about them Cowboys? The way Jerry Jones operates is he likes to make people be like he likes to be right and prove people wrong. So don't be afraid, or don't be afraid. Don't be fooled, or don't be surprised if Jerry Jones trades out of that 10 spot. And the reason I say that is because if you look at their positional needs right now, it could be another hot spot for a trade down. They did it back in they don't do it much. Jerry Jones doesn't do it much, but the last time he did it, or one of the few times he did it, was back in 2013, where he traded with the San Francisco 49ers, moving back from I believe it was, let's see, when was Eric Reed drafted? Now I got to think back. I think he was drafted somewhere in the teens. So they moved back. They moved back from down to 31, and the 49ers moved up and got Eric Reed in the first round. I believe it was number 18, if I'm not mistaken. Gosh, if I get this right, it's crazy. Back in 2013, Eric Reed was the selection for the San Francisco 49ers. GM Trent Baalke traded with the Dallas Cowboys. They moved up a few spots to number 18 to grab free safety Eric Reed out of LSU, and then the Cowboys traded back at number 31 to get Travis Frederick, who ended up being the better player in that deal, Travis Frederick, and they got draft capital in return. So when you put that all together, don't be surprised if that's a hot spot for another trade down. However, if they make the pick, I believe that player to be tight end Kyle Pitts. He is a mismatch nightmare for defensive coordinators. He also brings to the table a unique skill set from a height, weight, speed standpoint. And when you look at it on paper, you have Amari Cooper, you have guys like Michael Gallup, and then you have guys like CeeDee Lamb, and then you have a guy like Kyle Pitts. It just reminds you of the early 90s during the Cowboys Super Bowl run. And we all know who the head coach there is, right? Mike McCarthy. And if I'm not mistaken, Mike McCarthy always had some good not always, but he had some good tight ends wherever he went. And when you take that into account, how can Jerry Jones not draft tight end Kyle Pitts? He could even make a run, and you can make a case for any other player. You can go defense and say, okay, well, they need defensive line help. Yeah, they drafted Neville Gallimore last year, but they need more help. Maybe a Christian Barmore skyrockets up draft boards, and maybe he will be the pick. But I believe the Dallas Cowboys only drafted 2 SEC players since Felix Jones out of Arkansas, if I remember correctly. All this is on top. If I get this right, that's crazy. I believe Felix Jones was drafted number 22 overall or something like that. But yeah, so it doesn't happen very often, SEC products. And I think the other one was maybe Morris Claiborne out of LSU, drafted number 5 overall. But yeah, getting back to the Dallas Cowboys, I think that player is going to be Kyle Pitts, an SEC product out of Florida. As of right now, of course, things can change because we still have free agency coming up. We still have top salary cap casualties coming up. Those guys could be moving on to other teams, which then switches up their positional needs. And then we really don't know with the All-Star game coming up, with the Senior Bowl, the Reese's Senior Bowl, and pre-draft visits and private workouts and the pro days and so forth. No combine, it sucks, but you get the other factors too. All right. Well, that'll be it for today. I hope you liked what I had to say. If you did, please hit the subscribe button in the lower right hand corner of your screen as I keep all things Beast. I'll be breaking down another segment of my podcast, and that would be picks 11 through 15 tomorrow. So be sure to hit the subscribe button again and turn on the bell notifications. A follower said that he turned on the bell notifications but wasn't receiving the notifications of when I posted my videos or upload my videos, which is concerning. YouTube, get on that, man. That should not happen. All right. Thank you once again. Have a good night. BEASTwriter out.